Hey everyone. Tonight, we're going somewhere most of you will never go. A place darker than space, colder than the Arctic, and more crushing than anything your mind can fathom. We're descending 7 miles straight down into the Earth's most hostile environment, the Mariana Trench, and I'm going to tell you exactly what's waiting at the bottom. Forget what you think you know. This isn't a nature documentary. This is a deep dive into real science, genuine mysteries, and yes, some theories that'll make you question everything you've been told about our planet. So before we plunge into the abyss, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe if you're into this kind of content and would like to see more. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing there are people from Tokyo to Toronto, all diving into these mysteries together. Now go ahead and dim those lights. Maybe grab some headphones. Let the world fade away for a bit, because where we're going, there is no light. There is no sound except what we bring with us, and there is absolutely no escape if something goes wrong. Let's descend. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're in a titanium sphere, barely larger than a refrigerator, sitting on the deck of a research vessel somewhere in the western Pacific Ocean. It's 2012. Maybe it's 2019. The year doesn't matter because time moves differently down there. The crew is running final checks. Your life support systems, your communications array, the integrity of your pressure hull. Everything has to be perfect because you're about to do something only a handful of humans have ever done. You're going to challenge a deep, the deepest point on the entire planet. The crane lifts your vessel and suddenly you're dangling over the side of the ship. Below you, the Pacific stretches out in every direction, dark blue and deceptively calm. Beautiful, even. You don't see what's beneath. You can't see what's beneath, because what's beneath is a vertical drop of nearly 7 miles. 36,000 feet of water pressing down, down, down into a crack in the Earth's crust so deep that if you drop Mount Everest into it, the peak wouldn't even break the surface. The cables release. You begin to sink. The first few minutes are almost pleasant. Sunlight still penetrates. You can see fish darting past your viewport. The water glows, a brilliant azure. But this comfort is temporary, an illusion, because with every meter you descend, the ocean reveals its true nature. It is not a place for humans. It never was. At 200 meters, the light begins to fade. The blue deepens to navy. The fish becomes strange, larger, more alien in appearance. This is the twilight zone, where only 1% of surface light penetrates. You check your depth gauge. You've barely started. You have 10,800 meters left to go. At 1,000 meters, the sunlight is gone. Completely gone. You are now in perpetual night, and you will remain in perpetual night until you return to the surface. If you return to the surface. Your lights click on, cutting through the black water like knives through silk. Jellyfish drift past, bioluminescent creatures that pulse with eerie green and blue light. They look beautiful. They look peaceful. They are neither. They are predators, optimized by millions of years of evolution to survive in conditions that would obliterate you in seconds. 2,000 meters. 3,000. The pressure outside your hull is now over 4,300 pounds per square inch. Enough to crush a car into a cube the size of a briefcase. Your sphere groans, metal compresses, seals tighten. The engineers promised you it would hold. They showed you the calculations. They told you about the safety factors. But here, in the dark, with nothing but a few inches of titanium between you and instant death, those promises feel very thin indeed. 4,000 meters. You're now deeper than the Titanic, deeper than most submarines can go, deeper than 99% of the ocean floor, and you're still less than halfway there. Something moves outside your window, large, fast, gone before you can focus on it. Your heart rate spikes, the radio crackles, the surface asks if you're okay. You say yes, but your voice betrays you, because you just realize something profound and terrifying. You are in their world now, and you are not welcome. 5,000 meters, 6,000. The creatures here are nightmares given flesh. Fang-toothed fish with teeth so long they cannot close their mouths. Gulper eels with jaws that unhinge like snakes, capable of swallowing prey larger than themselves. Viperfish, hatchetfish, dragonfish. Names that sound like mythology but describe very real animals adapted to very real darkness. At 8,000 meters, you enter the Hadal Zone, named after Hades. The Greek underworld. This is not hyperbole. This is not poetic license. This is the scientific name for the deepest parts of the ocean. And scientists chose it very deliberately, because this is as close to hell as Earth gets. Then you've got the tube worms, entire colonies of them, clustered around hydrothermal vents and cold seeps. These worms have no mouth, no digestive system. They survive through chemosynthesis, hosting bacteria in their bodies that convert chemicals like methane and hydrogen sulfide into energy. They can grow up to 10 feet long and live for over 250 years. They are, in every sense, living fossils, remnants of Earth's ancient oceans, anemones, sponges, brittle stars, all clinging to rocks and sediment, filter feeding in the darkness, waiting for organic matter to drift down from the world above. Some of these creatures are so slow-growing that individual specimens may be centuries old. A sponge you see today might have started growing before Columbus reached America. And the jellyfish. Oh, the jellyfish. During James Cameron's 2012 dive to Challenger Deep, his cameras captured footage of jellyfish drifting through the abyss like ghosts. One species hovered completely motionless in the water, tentacles spread wide, waiting for prey to blunder into it. This ambush predation strategy is common in the deep ocean where energy is scarce. Why waste effort chasing food when you can simply wait for it to come to you? But here's where it gets deeply, profoundly unsettling. In 2020, scientists discovered entire ecosystems thriving near the Mariana Trench that shouldn't exist. We're talking about animal communities, including thousands of tubeworms and bivalves, observed at depths up to 9,533 meters. These organisms rely on chemosynthesis, using chemical energy from methane produced by microbes deep within the Earth's crust. This means there are entire food webs down there that have zero connection to sunlight. They don't need photosynthesis. They don't need the surface. They are completely independent biospheres, thriving in isolation. Think about that. Life that doesn't need the sun. Life that exists in permanent darkness, under crushing pressure, near freezing temperatures. And it doesn't just survive, it thrives. This raises an uncomfortable question. If life can flourish in the most hostile environment on Earth, an environment that seems designed to prevent life, then where else might it exist? What other impossible places harbour ecosystems we can't imagine? Scientists are now seriously considering the possibility that similar ecosystems could exist beneath the ice of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or in the subsurface oceans of Enceladus, orbiting Saturn. The Mariana Trench isn't just teaching us about Earth. It's teaching us about the universe. But we're not done, because what we've discovered is bizarre. What we haven't discovered yet is terrifying. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration detected something strange. An extremely powerful, ultra-low frequency sound recorded by underwater microphones spread across the Pacific Ocean. The sound was so loud, it was picked up by sensors over 3,000 miles apart. They called it the bloop. The bloop lasted for about 1 minute. It rose rapidly in frequency over that time and then stopped. When scientists analysed the audio signature, they found something disturbing. The sound profile matched that of a living creature. Specifically, it matched the vocalizations of marine mammals, but scaled up to an impossible size. If the bloop was made by an animal, that animal would have to be significantly larger than a blue whale, the largest animal known to have ever existed on Earth. We're talking something possibly hundreds of feet long. NOAA later stated that the bloop was likely caused by an ice quake, a massive fracturing of Antarctic ice shelves. The audio signature, they claimed, only resembled biological sounds by coincidence. This explanation satisfied most scientists, but not everyone. Because the thing is, the bloop originated from a point roughly 1,500 miles west of the southern tip of South America, right near the deepest parts of the Pacific, right near trench systems similar to the Mariana. And icebergs don't frequent those areas. The Antarctic ice shelf is thousands of miles away. Some researchers have pointed out that the ocean's deepest regions remain almost entirely unexplored. We've mapped more of the moon's surface than we have of our own ocean floor. Less than 25% of the seabed has been surveyed in any meaningful detail. The Mariana Trench, despite being the most famous deep-sea feature, has been visited by humans fewer times than the summit of Mount Everest. If there were large, undiscovered species living in the Hadal zones, we might never know. Sonar has limited penetration at those depths. Visual observation requires direct descent, which is expensive, time-consuming, and extremely dangerous. ROVs can only stay down for limited periods before battery constraints force them to ascend. And then there are the other sounds. In 2014, researchers detected a series of low-frequency pulses emanating from the Mariana Trench. The sounds repeated at regular intervals, suggesting either a biological source or some kind of geological process not yet understood. Further investigation was planned, but never carried out due to funding cuts. In 2016, during a NOAA expedition to the trench, hydrophones picked up what sounded like metallic clanging at depths exceeding 30,000 feet. The sounds repeated sporadically over several days, then stopped. Scientists speculated it could be debris from old shipwrecks settling on the bottom, but no known wrecks exist in that area. Local fishermen in Guam and the Mariana Islands have stories passed down through generations about sounds from the deep. Groaning, rumbling, scraping, sounds that rise from the ocean during certain times of year and can be heard on calm nights. Western science dismisses these as folklore, but indigenous knowledge has proven accurate before when scientists were wrong. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the 60-foot prehistoric shark that some people believe is still lurking in the Mariana Trench. Megalodon, Carcharodon's megalodon, the largest predatory shark to ever exist. Fossils indicate it grew up to 60 feet long, weighed over 60 tons, and had a bite force exceeding 40,000 pounds per square inch. It could swallow a killer whale whole. It hunted whales for breakfast. It ruled the oceans for over 20 million years. And then, about 3.6 million years ago, it it went extinct. Or did it? The theory goes like this. Megalodon didn't go extinct. It simply retreated to the deep ocean, where food was scarce, but predators were non-existent. Over millions of years, it adapted to the crushing pressures and frigid temperatures of the Hadal zone. It learned to survive on the occasional giant squid or deep-sea fish, and now it lives in the Mariana Trench, hidden from human eyes, hunting in the darkness. Supporters of this theory point to several pieces of evidence. First, megalodon teeth have been found that appear to be only 10,000 years old, based on manganese crust dating. That's 3.59 million years more recent than the supposed extinction date. Second, there have been reports from deep-sea fishermen of enormous sharks spotted in remote areas. Third, and most compellingly, the ocean is really, really big, and we know almost nothing about what lives in its deepest parts. Here's the problem with the megalodon theory, though. It's almost certainly wrong. Megalodon was an apex predator that fed primarily on large marine mammals like whales. Whales don't live in the Mariana Trench. They live near the surface where sunlight supports the plankton they eat. Without whales, megalodon has no food source. Even if it adapted to eat deep-sea creatures, the energy requirements for an animal that size are astronomical. There simply isn't enough biomass at Hadal depths to support a population of 60-foot sharks. Additionally, megalodon was adapted for warm, shallow waters. Its physiology, based on what we know from fossil records, wouldn't function in near freezing temperatures. Cold-blooded animals slow down dramatically in cold water. A cold megalodon would be a sluggish, starving megalodon. And finally, we have no sonar evidence. Modern submarines and ROVs, equipped with advanced sonar, have surveyed large portions of the trench. Nothing remotely resembling a 60-foot shark has ever appeared on those scans. If megalodon existed, we'd have found it by now. But here's the uncomfortable truth that keeps the theory alive. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We haven't found megalodon in the Mariana Trench, true. But we haven't conclusively explored the entire trench either. There are sections miles across that have never been surveyed. There are caves and crevasses that have never been examined. There are, quite literally, entire regions of the seafloor that no human eye or camera has ever seen. Could something large and predatory be hiding down there? Something we haven't discovered yet? Scientists say no. Conspiracy theorists say maybe. The ocean says nothing because the ocean keeps its secrets very, very well. Now we need to talk about something that isn't mysterious or exciting, but is far more important than any speculation about giant sharks. In 2018, explorer Victor Vescovo descended to Challenger Deep in the DSV limiting factor. At a depth of 35,853 feet, he spotted something that shouldn't exist. Something that has no business being in the deepest, most remote place on Earth. A plastic bag. Just floating there, drifting in the current. A flimsy piece of polyethylene, probably from a grocery store somewhere in Asia, that had somehow made its way through 7 miles of water and ended up in the Mariana Trench. Along with it, researchers found candy wrappers, plastic bottles, and various other forms of human refuse. Let that sink in. Literally. The deepest point on the planet, a place only 5 humans have ever visited, a place more remote than the surface of Mars, is contaminated with our trash. But it gets worse. In 2019, scientists conducted a study analyzing amphipods collected from the trench. They found high concentrations of persistent organic pollutants in the creatures' bodies. PCB PFAS, flame retardants, industrial chemicals that were banned decades ago. These pollutants, despite being outlawed, continue to circulate through ocean currents and food chains, eventually making their way to the deepest depths. The amphipods weren't just contaminated, they were heavily contaminated. Concentration levels in some specimens exceeded those found in heavily industrialized coastal waters. Think about that. Creatures living 7 miles underwater in the most isolated ecosystem on Earth have higher toxin levels than fish living next to Chinese factory outflow pipes. How is this possible? Through a process called bioaccumulation. Pollutants bind to organic matter. That matter sinks through the water column, settling on the sea floor. Bottom-dwelling creatures consume it. Predators eat those creatures. Toxins concentrate at each level of the food chain. Eventually, creatures at the bottom of the Mariana Trench are eating sediment laced with chemicals from factories, cars, and agriculture thousands of miles away. This has profound implications. It means there is no away. When we throw something away, when we flush chemicals down drains, when we dump waste in landfills that leach into groundwater, it doesn't disappear. It circulates. It concentrates. It ends up in the last places on Earth we thought were pristine. Scientists are now worried about something even more insidious: microplastics. These tiny fragments of degraded plastic are everywhere in the ocean. Everywhere. Surface waters, mid-depths, and yes, the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Studies have found microplastic particles in sediment cores taken from Challenger Deep. Every sample contained synthetic fibers and fragments. Marine animals are consuming these particles. They mistake them for food or ingest them accidentally while feeding. The plastics can't be digested, so they accumulate in digestive tracts, causing blockages, starvation, and death. Even creatures that survive long enough to reproduce pass some of these toxins to their offspring. We are witnessing the contamination of Earth's final frontier, not through deliberate action, but through sheer carelessness. No one is dumping trash directly into the Mariana Trench. No ships are sailing out to Challenger Deep to toss garbage overboard. The pollution is simply the diffuse, inevitable result of 8 billion humans using plastic, chemicals, and industrial products, then discarding them without much thought. The Mariana Trench was supposed to be untouchable, too deep, too remote, too hostile for human impact. We were wrong, profoundly, catastrophically wrong. There is nowhere on Earth we haven't touched, nowhere we haven't changed, and nowhere we can't ruin. Now let's talk about the theories that don't appear in scientific journals, the whispers, the speculation, the claims that, whether true or false, refuse to die. One of the most persistent conspiracy theories surrounding the Mariana Trench is that it houses a secret government research facility. According to believers, the trench is the perfect location for classified experiments. It's remote, inaccessible, and deep enough that conventional surveillance can't penetrate it. The theory suggests that the United States, China, or Russia, possibly all three, have constructed underwater bases at extreme depths. These facilities conduct research into exotic technologies, pressure-resistant materials, deep-sea mining equipment, possibly bioweapons derived from extremophile organisms. The crushing pressure and isolation provide perfect operational security. No spy satellites, no nosy journalists, just miles of dark water and creatures that can't talk. Evidence for this theory is, unsurprisingly, thin. Supporters point to unusual sonar readings, unexplained submarine activity near the Mariana Islands, and occasional reports from fishermen who claim to have seen strange lights rising from the deep. They cite the fact that James Cameron's 2012 dive was partially funded by organisations with military connections, suggesting that his expedition was cover for reconnaissance missions. Skeptics correctly note that building an underwater base at Hadal depths would be engineering insanity. The pressure at Challenger Deep is so extreme that materials science struggles to create vessels that can withstand even a single descent. The idea of a permanent structure with airlocks, power generation, and life support surviving long-term at those depths is currently beyond human capability. But then again, currently beyond human capability doesn't mean impossible. The Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb, was beyond human capability until it wasn't. Stealth aircraft were impossible until they were built. The internet was science fiction until it became infrastructure. What if there are materials we don't know about? Classified alloys or composites developed in government labs? What if there are construction techniques that haven't been declassified? The US government kept the SR-71 Blackbird secret for years while it flew reconnaissance missions. They concealed the stealth bomber program until they were ready to reveal it. Is it so implausible that deep-sea technology has advanced beyond what's publicly known? Another version of this conspiracy claims that governments aren't building facilities. They're investigating something they found, something ancient, something that shouldn't be there. In 2012, shortly after James Cameron's dive, an obscure blog post began circulating online. It claimed that Cameron had discovered something during his descent. Not life, not pollution, something else. According to the post, Cameron's cameras captured footage of geometric structures on the seafloor, right angles in rock formations, symmetrical patterns in sediment, shapes that didn't match natural geology. The blog post included grainy images, supposedly screenshots from unreleased footage, showing what appeared to be stone blocks arranged in deliberate configurations. The post was quickly debunked. The images were proven to be digitally altered photos of underwater ruins from the Mediterranean. Cameron himself never mentioned any structures. The National Geographic documentary of his dive showed nothing unusual beyond the expected amphipods and snailfish. But the theory persisted and evolved. Some versions now claim that ancient civilizations, long before recorded history, possessed technology advanced enough to reach the ocean's deepest points. Why would they go there? Perhaps for the same reasons we do: curiosity, exploration, research. Or perhaps they were hiding something. Knowledge, artifacts, technology they didn't want future generations to find. This connects to broader theories about lost civilizations like Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. If advanced societies existed before the Ice Age, 12,000 or more years ago, and if they were destroyed by cataclysmic events like floods or asteroid impacts, where would their ruins be? The ocean floor, specifically the deepest parts of the ocean floor where geological activity is minimal and sediment accumulation preserves structures. The Mariana Trench, formed by subduction zones where tectonic plates collide, would be an ideal place for such ruins to survive. Anything buried there would be protected from erosion, hidden from view, and preserved under layers of sediment. Unless someone went looking specifically for such structures, they'd never be found. Of course, mainstream archaeology dismisses this entirely. There's no credible evidence for advanced pre-Ice Age civilizations. Human technology 12,000 years ago consisted of stone tools and basic agriculture. The idea that they built submarines or diving equipment capable of reaching Challenger Deep is absurd. But here's where it gets interesting. In the 1960s and 70s, scientists discovered that ancient Greeks and Romans had diving bells. Simple devices, essentially overturned pots that trapped air, allowing divers to descend to moderate depths. These were far more sophisticated than previously believed. If ancient Mediterranean cultures had this technology, what did older, potentially more advanced cultures have? And there are anomalies. Structures like the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, a series of underwater rock formations that some researchers believe are man-made. The Bimini Road in the Bahamas, an underwater rock formation that resembles a paved highway. Dwarka, off the coast of India, where archaeologists have found ruins of a city that supposedly sunk thousands of years ago. None of these are in the Mariana Trench, obviously, but they prove that underwater archaeology is revealing structures previously thought to be myth. If ancient cities can exist in shallow waters, if Bronze Age technology was more advanced than we assumed, then the idea of exploring deeper waters isn't completely impossible. Still, diving to Challenger Deep with ancient technology, that remains firmly in the realm of fantasy. Unless there's something we don't know. Unless there's evidence we haven't found. Unless, as conspiracy theorists love to suggest, someone has found it and is keeping it secret. Now, we enter true fringe territory. The theory that the Mariana Trench isn't just a deep ocean valley, it's an entrance. According to Hollow Earth theory, our planet isn't solid. It's hollow, or at least partially hollow, with vast caverns and potentially entire ecosystems existing beneath the surface. Entrances to this inner world are located at the poles and at certain deep ocean points. The Mariana Trench, being a subduction zone where tectonic plates push into the mantle, would be a natural candidate for such an entrance. Supporters claim that the trench doesn't just go down 7 miles, it goes deeper, much deeper, but the deepest parts are concealed either by geological formations or deliberately by governments that have discovered them. Inside, according to the theory, lies a world we can't imagine. Bioluminescent ecosystems, geothermal vents powering ancient civilizations, possibly non-human intelligences that have lived beneath the ocean floor for millennia. These beings avoid surface contact, preferring isolation. But occasionally they venture out, and when they do, we see strange things. Unidentified submerged objects, USOS, craft that move underwater at speeds no human submarine can achieve. There's even a subset of this theory claiming that UFOs aren't extraterrestrial, they're terrestrial. They come from underwater bases connected to the inner Earth through places like the Mariana Trench. They emerge from the ocean, fly through our airspace and return before we can intercept them. Is any of this true? Number. Seismology has definitively proven that Earth is not hollow. We can measure earthquake waves traveling through the planet. We can map the density of different layers. We know there's a molten outer core and a solid inner core. There is no hollow interior with advanced civilizations. But here's the thing, people believe it. And they believe it because the ocean still holds secrets we can't explain. Because we've only explored a fraction of its depths. Because every time we think we understand the limits of life, we discover something that shatters those assumptions. Hollow Earth theory is wrong, but the impulse behind it, the sense that there's more to our planet than we've been told, that feeling isn't entirely unjustified. We are ignorant, vastly, profoundly ignorant about what lies beneath the waves. And that ignorance breeds speculation, some of it ridiculous, but some of it reflecting legitimate wonder about the unknown. Let's get back to established science. Because even without conspiracies, the Mariana Trench is strange enough. In 2017, researchers analyzing samples from the trench discovered bacteria that metabolize chemicals in ways we didn't think were possible. These microorganisms use pressure itself as an energy source. They have enzymes that only function correctly under crushing weight. Remove the pressure and the enzymes denature. The bacteria die. This is the opposite of how we understand life. Life, we thought, tolerates extreme conditions but doesn't require them. Desert bacteria can survive heat but don't need it. Arctic microbes endure cold but would thrive in warmth. Trench bacteria need pressure. They can't live anywhere else. What does this mean? It means life isn't just adaptable, it's diverse beyond our current understanding. There may be entire categories of organisms that exist only in extreme environments and would be impossible to study under normal conditions. Scientists are now speculating about pressure-obligate ecosystems, not just organisms that tolerate pressure, but entire food webs that require it. Predators that hunt only at Hadal depths. Filter feeders that extract nutrients from sediment compressed by thousands of atmospheres. Microbes that produce chemicals we've never seen before. Chemicals with pharmaceutical or industrial applications. One research team from Japan isolated a bacterium from Challenger Deep sediment that produces a compound with potent antibiotic properties. This compound is effective against drug-resistant strains of bacteria that current antibiotics can't touch. It could save millions of lives, and it came from the bottom of the Mariana Trench. How many other undiscovered compounds are down there? How many cures for diseases, solutions to industrial problems, or scientific breakthroughs are waiting in the cells of creatures we haven't even named yet? Then there's the giant virus question. In 2013, scientists discovered Pandora viruses, enormous viruses that blur the line between virus and cellular life. These viruses are so large, you can see them under a standard microscope. They have genomes containing hundreds of genes, far more than any virus should have. Some of these giant viruses were found in deep-sea sediments. And scientists suspect there are even larger, even stranger viruses lurking in places like the Mariana Trench. Viruses with genomes containing entirely novel genes. Genes that don't match any known life form on Earth. Genes whose function remains completely mysterious. Are these ancient viruses preserved in the sediment for millions of years? Are they still active? Could they infect modern organisms? We don't know. And that uncertainty is unsettling because viruses have a nasty habit of jumping between species. If something from the Hadal zone hitched a ride on a research vessel and made it back to the surface, what would happen? The CDC and various international health organizations have protocols for handling deep-sea samples precisely because of this risk. Any biological material brought up from Hadal depths must be quarantined and analyzed before being released into the general environment. It's unlikely that a trench virus could infect humans, but unlikely isn't impossible. And then there are the creatures we keep finding that shouldn't exist at all. In 2020, scientists discovered a new species of snailfish at 27,000 feet. Nothing unusual there, except this particular fish had something no other Hadal creature has ever been observed with: functional eyes. Most creatures at those depths are blind. There's no point in having eyes when no light exists. This snailfish, though, had fully developed working eyes. Why? What is it seeing down there? Bioluminescence from other creatures, perhaps. But why evolve such energy-expensive organs when every other species has abandoned them? What evolutionary pressure drove this fish to maintain vision when its neighbors went blind? We don't know. The fish was observed, filmed, and then it swam away into the darkness. Researchers haven't been able to locate another specimen. There are also the supergiant specimens. We've mentioned supergiant amphipods, but there are supergiant isopods, supergiant sea spiders, and various other creatures that grow to sizes far larger than their shallow water relatives. This phenomenon is called deep sea gigantism, and while we have theories about why it happens, slower metabolism, longer lifespans, reduced predation, we don't fully understand it. What we do know is that size correlates with depth up to a certain point. The deeper you go, the larger individual specimens become, until you hit Hadal depths, where things get weird. At Challenger Deep, creatures are smaller again. Amphipods are large by normal standards, but small compared to their mid-depth cousins. The snailfish are modest in size. Everything seems constrained by the extreme pressure. Except we keep finding exceptions. A single photograph from a 2018 expedition shows what appears to be a fish-like shape in the background of a frame. The foreground is focused on sediment and amphipods, but in the upper right corner, barely visible, is a dark silhouette. It's large, much larger than any known Hadal fish. Researchers analysed the image and concluded it was probably a distortion, a trick of the lighting, or sediment in the water creating a false shape, probably. But the image has never been satisfactorily explained, and the original researchers won't discuss it publicly. Make of that what you will. Let's talk about what's under the creatures. The rock itself. The Mariana Trench is a subduction zone, a place where the Pacific Plate is being forced beneath the Mariana Plate. This process occurs at a rate of about 2 to 3 inches per year. Doesn't sound like much, but over geological time, entire mountains of seafloor have been consumed. What happens to that rock? It descends into the mantle, where it melts and recycles. Eventually, millions of years later, it resurfaces through volcanic activity. This is the mechanism that drives plate tectonics, the engine of Earth's geology. But here's what keeps geologists awake at night. Subduction zones are where the most powerful earthquakes occur. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, magnitude 9.1, was caused by subduction. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, magnitude 9.1 to 9.3, which triggered the devastating tsunami that killed over 230,000 people, was subduction. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile, the largest ever recorded at magnitude 9.5, was subduction. The Mariana Trench is a loaded gun. Tectonic stress accumulates along the fault line. Eventually, that stress will release. When it does, the resulting earthquake could be catastrophic. A magnitude 9 or greater event could trigger tsunamis that would devastate Pacific coastlines from Japan to California to Chile. We monitor the trench constantly with seismometers and GPS stations. We track plate movement. We measure stress accumulation. But predicting earthquakes remains impossible. We know it will happen. We just don't know when. Some geologists estimate that a major Mariana subduction earthquake occurs approximately every 500 to 1,000 years. The last one was possibly in the 16th or 17th century, based on historical tsunami records from Japan and the Philippines. Which means we could be due for another one. Or it might not happen for another 500 years. The Earth doesn't follow schedules, but there's something else. Something that bothers researchers who study the trench's geology. The subduction rate doesn't match the volcanic output. The Mariana Islands are volcanic. They formed from magma created by the subducting Pacific Plate melting in the mantle. We can calculate roughly how much magma should be produced based on the subduction rate. And the numbers don't add up. There's less volcanic activity than there should be. Where is the missing magma? Is it accumulating beneath the surface in massive magma chambers? Is it being released through underwater vents we haven't discovered? Or is there some mechanism we don't understand that's preventing it from reaching the surface? If it's accumulating, then somewhere beneath the Mariana Islands is a pocket of molten rock under immense pressure. And if that pressure releases suddenly, the resulting eruption could be on the scale of historical supervolcano events like Krakatoa or Mount Tambora. Probably not though. Probably we're just missing data. Probably there are vents releasing magma gradually that we haven't found yet. Probably the calculations are off due to factors we haven't accounted for. Probably. We've talked about what we found in the trench. Now let's talk about what we've left there. Every expedition to the Mariana Trench leaves something behind. Sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally. Sample containers, markers, equipment that failed and had to be jettisoned, pieces of submersibles that broke off during ascent or descent, bait cages that couldn't be recovered. Most of this is documented. Mission logs record what was left and where, but not all of it. There are rumors among deep-sea researchers of unscheduled drops, equipment that malfunctioned and had to be abandoned, cargo that was officially lost but unofficially delivered. What kind of cargo? That's where speculation runs wild. Radioactive waste, some claim. The trench would be an ideal disposal site. Drop a containment vessel down there, and it's gone. No one can reach it. No one will stumble across it. Even if the container eventually fails, the radioactive material would be diluted across thousands of cubic miles of water. Governments deny this, of course. International treaties prohibit ocean dumping of radioactive waste. But treaties get broken, and the trench is very, very remote. Who would know? Then there are the biological samples. Every nation with deep-sea capability has taken specimens from the trench. Most of this is legitimate research, catalogued and published. But there's a thriving black market for exotic deep-sea organisms. Collectors pay enormous sums for rare specimens. Private research companies want samples for pharmaceutical development. Military labs study extremophile organisms for bioweapon applications. How much deep-sea trafficking occurs? Impossible to say. But consider this. In 2016, Japanese authorities arrested a researcher who had been illegally selling deep-sea samples to Chinese pharmaceutical companies. The investigation revealed a network of scientists, fishermen and dealers operating across the Pacific. If that network existed for mid-depth organisms, why wouldn't one exist for Hadal species? The samples taken from the Mariana Trench could be in laboratories anywhere in the world right now, being studied, being experimented on, being genetically modified, and we'd never know. There's also the matter of the cameras and recording equipment that have been lost. Multiple expeditions have deployed cameras that failed to return to the surface. Technically, they're still down there filming. Battery life on deep-sea cameras can last years. So somewhere in the trench, there might be cameras recording footage that no human will ever see. What are they capturing? Probably sediment and the occasional amphipod. But possibly something else. Something rare. Something unknown. And that footage is being recorded onto memory cards that will eventually fill up and stop recording, or be destroyed by pressure, or be buried under sediment. Lost data. Forever. 22 successful descents to Challenger Deep have been completed as of recent records, with 19 of those made in the DSV limiting factor beginning in 2019. James Cameron was the first person to make a solo dive to that point in 2012, more than 50 years after the first descent. Victor Vescovo set a new record in April 2019 when he descended to 35,853 feet, going 52 feet deeper than Cameron's dive. During that expedition between April 28th and May 5th, his team also completed a dive to Serena Deep, about 128 miles away from Challenger Deep. But what these expeditions revealed changed how we think about the trench. Cameron's dive in 2012 aboard the Deep-Sea Challenger was supposed to be a triumph, and it was, technically. He reached the bottom. He spent several hours exploring. He collected samples. He returned safely. Mission accomplished. But the footage was disappointing. Not because it was poorly shot, Cameron is a legendary filmmaker, but because there wasn't much to see. The seafloor looked barren, empty, a desert of pale sediment with occasional amphipods and a single snailfish. That was it. No forests of tube worms, no exotic creatures, just emptiness. The scientific community was confused. Previous dives and ROV deployments had shown more biodiversity. Where were all the creatures? Had Cameron landed in a dead zone? Had he simply missed the interesting areas? Or had something changed? Then Vescovo's expeditions began, and everything became clear. Vescovo spent 4 hours on the bottom during his 2019 dive, far longer than Cameron. He explored a wider area, and his equipment was newer, with better cameras and lighting. What he captured on film was astounding. The biodiversity wasn't missing. It was patchy. The trench floor isn't uniform. There are areas teeming with life and areas that are nearly barren, often just meters apart. Cameron had landed in a relatively dead zone. Vescovo explored more thoroughly and found the living zones. His footage showed dense aggregations of amphipods, multiple species of snailfish, strange jellyfish hovering motionless in the water, creatures that didn't match any known taxonomy, and most importantly, evidence of a complex food web. Previous theories suggested that Hadal zones were food limited. Everything relied on organic matter falling from above, marine snow, which is scarce. But Vescovo's team found evidence of localized food sources, methane seeps, bacterial mats, possibly even hydrothermal vents, though none were directly observed. This means the Mariana Trench isn't just a dumping ground for surface detritus. It's an active ecosystem with multiple energy sources. And if there are multiple energy sources, there can be larger, more complex organisms than we previously thought possible. Vescovo also discovered something disturbing. During one dive, his cameras captured footage of a slick on the seafloor, an oily substance coating the sediment across an area roughly 50 feet in diameter. Analysis of samples suggested it was petroleum-based, possibly from a sunken ship or offshore drilling accident. But no known wrecks or drilling sites exist in that area. Where did it come from? Ocean currents could have carried it there from hundreds of miles away. Or it could be seeping up from beneath the seafloor, indicating oil deposits we didn't know existed. Either explanation is problematic. If currents brought it, that means pollution is reaching the trench from distances far greater than models predicted. If it's seeping naturally, then extracting that oil would require drilling in the deepest part of the ocean, an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. The discovery sparked debate. Some scientists argued for immediate action to prevent further contamination. Others pointed out that the trench is already contaminated with microplastics and industrial chemicals, so one oil slick doesn't change much. A few suggested we should exploit any oil deposits found there because energy demands continue to grow. No consensus was reached. The debate continues. Meanwhile, the oil slick is still there, slowly spreading, slowly being consumed by bacteria adapted to eat hydrocarbons in the deep sea. nature cleaning up our mess again. In March 2016, NOAA released recordings of low moans, grumbles, and occasional screeches from Challenger Deep, captured over more than 3 weeks by a titanium-encased microphone. Listen to these recordings if you can find them online. They're unsettling. Not because they're loud or obviously threatening. They're unsettling because they're strange, alien. They don't sound like anything you've heard before. Some sounds are clearly biological. Whale calls, heavily distorted by distance and depth. Fish vocalizations. Crustaceans clicking their appendages. But other sounds resist easy classification. There are deep, resonant tones that pulse at regular intervals. There are high-pitched scraping sounds that last for several minutes. There are sudden, sharp cracks that could be geological or biological. In 2016, researchers recorded a weird buzzing sound that occurred during dusk and dawn, which scientists thought could be a dinner bell for deep water organisms traveling up and down the water column to feed, detected around 660 to 3,300 feet depth. But the sounds from Challenger Deep are different. They're not following any pattern related to feeding times or migration. They're constant, a background hum of activity that never stops. It's the sound of an ecosystem functioning in perpetual darkness under crushing pressure, oblivious to the surface world. One sound in particular has baffled researchers. It appears in the recordings approximately every 40 minutes. It starts as a low rumble, gradually increases in pitch and volume, peaks at a frequency barely within human hearing range, then cuts off abruptly. The entire sequence lasts about 30 seconds. No known marine animal produces this sound. No known geological process produces it. Equipment malfunction was ruled out because the sound appears on multiple microphones deployed at different times. It's real. It's there. We just don't know what it is. Theories range from mundane to bizarre. Maybe it's a type of volcanic activity we haven't studied before. Maybe its resonance from seismic movements are too subtle to register on standard equipment. Maybe it's a biological phenomenon, a species we haven't discovered yet, calling to others of its kind. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Here's a thought that will keep you up at night. How do we define intelligence? Tool use? Problem solving? Communication? Self-awareness? By these metrics, dolphins are intelligent. So are octopuses, crows, elephants. Hell, some scientists argue that certain plants exhibit intelligence through distributed decision-making processes. Now consider the Mariana Trench, an environment where natural selection has operated for hundreds of millions of years, filtering for traits that maximize survival under extreme conditions. Organisms there have evolved biological technology we can barely understand. Pressure-resistant proteins, bioluminescence, chemosynthesis. These aren't simple adaptations, they're sophisticated biological engineering. What if some creatures down there have evolved something we'd recognize as intelligence, but in a form so alien we can't detect it? Communication through chemical signals that propagate through water over miles. Problem solving that operates on timescales of days or weeks rather than seconds. Consciousness that exists not in individual organisms, but in collective behavior patterns across entire populations. We wouldn't recognize it. We'd film it, catalog it as interesting behavior, and move on. Because we define intelligence based on human intelligence. We look for brains, language, tools. But maybe intelligence at Hadal depths looks nothing like that. Consider the amphipod swarms. Thousands of individuals moving in coordination, responding to environmental changes, collectively processing food sources. No individual amphipod is intelligent. But the swarm demonstrates behaviors that look an awful lot like decision-making. Is that intelligence or just complex instinct? Scientists studying ant colonies and slime molds have documented problem-solving behaviors that suggest some form of distributed intelligence. No single ant or slime mold cell is smart, but the collective exhibits intelligence-like properties. Could the same principle apply to deep-sea ecosystems? We don't know. We can't know, not without far more extensive observation than we've currently conducted. And that's assuming we even know what to look for. There's a concept in astrobiology called the shadow biosphere. It suggests that there might be forms of life on Earth that we haven't detected because they're so different from what we expect that we don't recognize them as life. Maybe they use different biochemistry. Maybe they operate at different scales or timescales. They're invisible to us, not because they're hiding, but because we don't know how to see them. The Mariana Trench could harbor a shadow biosphere, life forms that exist in ways we haven't imagined. And if such life exists, could it be intelligent? Could it be watching us watching it? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But the ocean has surprised us before. It'll surprise us again. Let's ground ourselves for a moment. Step back from the speculation and conspiracy theories and focus on what we actually know. The Mariana Trench is the deepest point on Earth. It reaches approximately 36,000 feet below sea level. The pressure at the bottom is roughly 1,086 bars, or 15,750 pounds per square inch. The temperature hovers just above freezing. No sunlight penetrates. It is, by any reasonable standard, one of the most hostile environments our planet offers. And yet, life thrives there. This is the important part. Not the speculation about giants lurking in the dark, or secret bases, or alien intelligence. The important part is that life exists where it shouldn't be able to exist. This tells us something profound about the nature of life itself. Life is resilient, absurdly, impossibly resilient. We keep finding it in places that should kill it. Boiling hydrothermal vents, frozen Antarctic lakes buried under miles of ice, radioactive waste pools, and now, the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Every discovery expands the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Every new ecosystem we find in extreme environments forces us to reconsider our definitions and assumptions. If life can survive at Challenger Deep, it can probably survive anywhere on Earth. And if it can survive anywhere on Earth, maybe it can survive elsewhere too. This is why the Mariana Trench matters. Not because of what's down there, but because of what it teaches us about what could be out there. In the subsurface oceans of icy moons, in the atmospheres of gas giants, in places we haven't imagined yet. The trench is a laboratory, a natural experiment in extreme survival, and we've barely begun to study it. Here's something most people don't know. For every successful dive to the Mariana Trench, there are dozens that were planned but never executed. Funding runs out, equipment fails, weather doesn't cooperate, permits aren't granted, political situations change, scientific priorities shift. The ocean doesn't care about human plans, and it doesn't wait for convenient scheduling. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union planned a series of dives to Challenger Deep, using advanced submersibles developed for military purposes. The dives never happened. Official records cite technical difficulties. Unofficial sources suggest the subs were redirected to other, classified missions. What those missions were remains unknown. In the late 1990s, a Japanese billionaire funded an expedition that aimed to place a permanent research station on the trench floor. Not a manned station, obviously, but an automated laboratory that could conduct experiments and transmit data to the surface for years. The technology existed, the funding existed, the political will existed. Then, suddenly, it didn't. The project was cancelled without explanation. The billionaire died under mysterious circumstances 3 years later. His estate claimed the expedition was terminated due to environmental concerns, but critics point out that such concerns were never raised during the planning phase. What changed? No one knows. Multiple documentary filmmakers have attempted to follow up on James Cameron's dive. Several spent years in planning, raising funds, developing technology. None succeeded in actually making the dive. Equipment failures, permit problems, insurance issues, always something. You could argue this is just the reality of expensive, risky endeavours. Most ambitious projects fail. That's statistics, not conspiracy. But the pattern is interesting. When governmental or military organisations want to reach the trench, they seem to have better success rates than private expeditions. Why? Maybe governments simply have more resources, more backup plans, more institutional knowledge, or maybe they have access to technology and techniques that aren't available to civilian expeditions. Or maybe, just maybe, someone doesn't want too many people poking around down there. Right now, as you're reading this, the Mariana Trench continues its existence, indifferent to human curiosity. Amphipods swarm across the seafloor. Snailfish drift through the darkness. Pressure relentlessly crushes anything that doesn't belong. The ecosystem functions. The geology evolves. Secrets accumulate in sediment that may never be disturbed. We have plans, of course. Always plans. Deep ocean mining companies eye the trench and similar Hadal zones for rare earth elements. The seafloor contains valuable minerals needed for electronics, batteries, and renewable energy technology. The economic incentive to exploit these resources is enormous. Environmental groups oppose such mining, arguing that we don't understand Hadal ecosystems well enough to predict the impacts. Destroying unique species before we've even discovered them seems unconscionable, but economic pressure rarely yields to environmental concerns until damage is already done. Then there's the research. Scientists want more expeditions, more samples, more data. They want to deploy long-term monitoring stations. They want to map every square meter of the trench floor. They want to catalogue every species, sequence every genome, understand every adaptation. But funding is limited. Deep-sea research competes with space exploration, medical research, climate science, and countless other priorities. Space gets more attention because people can see space. You look up on a clear night and see stars. You can imagine traveling there. The deep ocean is invisible, out of sight, out of mind, out of funding. Some researchers have proposed ocean moons missions, expeditions that treat the Mariana Trench like we treat Europa or Enceladus. Send probes, establish bases, conduct comprehensive surveys. Frame it as preparation for exploring extraterrestrial oceans. This approach might attract funding from space agencies with larger budgets than oceanographic institutions. Will it work? Who knows? Politics and funding are unpredictable. Meanwhile, commercial ventures are moving forward. Victor Vescovo's Caladan. Oceanic began offering tourist dives to Challenger Deep, with 8-day trips costing $750,000 per person. 3 dives to the deepest point on Earth, along with support staff, scientific consultation, and presumably very comprehensive liability waivers. The question is, should we? Should we turn the Mariana Trench into a tourist destination? Should we extract minerals from its floor? Should we treat it as a resource to be exploited rather than a wilderness to be preserved? These are philosophical questions as much as practical ones. And they're questions we need to answer soon because technology is advancing faster than regulation. Within a decade, maybe two, Hadal Zone access will be routine. Submersibles will be cheaper. Descents will be safer. The trench will be explored, mapped, sampled, and exploited on an industrial scale. What we find during that process might astonish us, or disappoint us, or terrify us, but we'll find it. Because humans are driven to explore, to understand, to conquer. We climbed Everest because it was there. We went to the moon for the same reason. And we'll explore every inch of the Mariana Trench, eventually, regardless of what lurks in the darkness. Let's circle back to the mysteries. The real ones, not the conspiracy theories. The observations and data points that don't fit our current models. The giant amphipod problem. Amphipods in the trench grow larger than their shallow water relatives, which makes sense given the food scarcity and lack of predation. But there are reports, unverified, of truly massive specimens. We're talking amphipods the size of cats. These reports come from fishermen, mostly, people whose nets occasionally drag deep enough to catch Hadal creatures. The specimens are never preserved. They're too strange, too frightening. They get thrown back. Are these reports accurate? Probably not. Eyewitness testimony is unreliable, especially for creatures people aren't familiar with. A large amphipod in a tangle of net could easily be misestimated, but probably not isn't definitely not. Then there are the sediment cores. Scientists drill into the seafloor and extract cylinders of sediment, representing millions of years of accumulated material. These cores contain fossils, chemical signatures, and other data about Earth's history. Cores from the Mariana Trench have revealed something odd. Gaps in the sediment record. Periods where accumulation seems to have stopped or where material was removed. Geological processes can explain some of this. Underwater landslides, current surges, tectonic activity. But some gaps don't have obvious explanations. It's as if something periodically disturbs the seafloor in ways we don't understand. Maybe it's biological. Large creatures churning through sediment. Maybe it's geological. Processes we haven't documented. Or maybe it's something else. And there's the bacterial diversity problem. Scientists expected Hadal bacteria to be relatively uniform. Extreme environments usually host specialized species adapted to specific conditions. Instead, trench bacteria are astonishingly diverse. Hundreds, possibly thousands of species, many only distantly related to surface bacteria. Where did this diversity come from? How did it evolve in isolation? Are there multiple entry points for bacteria to colonize the trench, bringing genetic diversity from different source populations? Or has evolution in the trench proceeded faster than we thought possible, generating diversity in situ? We don't know. Every answer raises more questions. There's something humbling about the Mariana Trench, something that puts human existence into perspective. We think we own this planet. We've built cities across continents. We've split atoms. We've reached the moon. We've mapped genomes and built computers that simulate realities. We're Homo sapiens, the wise ape, the species that conquered Earth. And yet, 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface, there's a place we can barely touch. A place where we're visitors, not masters. A place that would kill us instantly if our technology failed. A place that doesn't care about our achievements or our ambitions. The trench reminds us that Earth is not ours. We're temporary residents on a planet that existed for billions of years before us and will exist for billions of years after we're gone. The deep ocean was here first. It will be here last. And it will never bend to human will the way we've bent forests, rivers, and grasslands. Some people find this terrifying. The idea that there are places beyond human control, places where we're insignificant, challenges our species' fundamental narcissism. We want to believe we're special. The trench says we're not. But others find it comforting, knowing that wilderness still exists, real wilderness where nature operates according to its own rules, without human interference, gives meaning to conservation efforts. If everything becomes domesticated, catalogued, and controlled, what's left to protect? The trench is one of the last truly wild places on Earth, and its existence matters. So here we are, at the end of this journey. What is at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? Life. Strange, beautiful, horrifying life. Amphipods and snailfish and jellyfish and bacteria and creatures we haven't named yet. Ecosystems powered by chemosynthesis and methane seeps and organic matter drifting down from the sunlit world above. Death. Sediment composed of countless dead organisms. Plastic waste and industrial pollution. Oil slicks and candy wrappers. The physical evidence of humanity's carelessness compressed under unimaginable pressure. Geology. Subduction zones swallowing ocean floor. Fault lines accumulating stress. Potential earthquakes and volcanic eruptions waiting to remind us that Earth is still geologically active, still dangerous, still beyond our control. Mysteries. Sounds we can't explain. Shapes in photographs that might be nothing. Sediment gaps and chemical anomalies and biodiversity patterns that don't match our models. And maybe, just maybe, things we haven't imagined yet. Species that defy classification. Phenomena that challenge our understanding of biology or chemistry or physics. Secrets that have waited in darkness for millions of years. Patient, silent, unknowable. Is Megalodon down there? Number? Almost certainly not. But something is down there. Many things. And we've barely begun to understand what they are. Are there secret government facilities? Probably not. But maybe classified experiments. Maybe unauthorized dumps. Maybe activities that would horrify us if we knew about them. Are there ancient structures? Definitely not. That's fantasy. But there might be geological formations that look artificial. Patterns in rock that humans instinctively recognize as significant, even when they're not. Our brains are wired to see patterns, and sometimes we see them where they don't exist. The truth is, we don't know what's at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Not really. We've visited it fewer times than we've been to the moon. We've mapped it less thoroughly than we've mapped Mars. It remains fundamentally unknown territory, and that's okay. That's important even, because the unknown is where wonder lives, where curiosity thrives, where science finds its purpose. The day we fully understand the Mariana Trench, map every inch, catalogue every species, explain every mystery, that day we lose something irreplaceable. The frontier closes, the adventure ends, and we're left with just another documented feature of a planet we've completely tamed. So maybe it's good that mysteries remain. Maybe it's healthy that the trench keeps its secrets. Maybe some questions should stay unanswered, at least for a while longer. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for diving into the abyss with me, for exploring the darkest, deepest, strangest place on our planet, for entertaining conspiracy theories and scientific facts and philosophical musings about life, death, and the nature of exploration. The Mariana Trench isn't going anywhere. It'll be there tomorrow, next year, a century from now. Waiting, existing, indifferent to whether we pay attention or not. But we should pay attention. because it's part of our world, part of our planet, part of the interconnected web of ecosystems and geology and chemistry that makes Earth habitable. What happens in the trench affects the rest of the ocean. What affects the ocean affects us. Nothing is isolated, nothing exists in a vacuum. And who knows? Maybe one day you'll have the opportunity to descend into that darkness yourself, to see firsthand the pale sediment, the swarming amphipods, the ghostly snailfish drifting past your viewport, to experience the profound isolation, the crushing pressure, the absolute darkness. Would you do it? Would you climb into that titanium sphere and let it sink 7 miles to the bottom of the world? I'm not sure I would, but I'm glad someone does. I'm glad people risk their lives to explore these places, because knowledge matters, discovery matters. Understanding our planet, truly understanding it, is worth the risk. The Mariana Trench is waiting. What we do about that, whether we explore it or exploit it or preserve it, will define our relationship with the ocean for generations to come. Choose wisely. That's it for tonight. The Mariana Trench, in all its terrifying glory. If you made it through this deep dive, you deserve a medal or therapy, possibly both. Hit that like button if this scratched that itch for weird ocean content. Subscribe if you want more explorations into the unknown, the mysterious, the places that make you question what we really know about our world. And drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Is Megalodon really extinct? Should we mine the Hadal zones? What's making those strange sounds? Or just tell me where you're watching from, because I'm always curious about who's out there listening to my rambling about deep sea horrors at 2 a.m. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the ocean is vast, dark, and full of things that would very much like to remain undiscovered. Sleep well.